Are you ready to take your first steps towards financial freedom by investing in property? Maybe you've started your portfolio but need some help continuing to grow. Lachlan Vidler and the team at Atlas Property Group are here to help. As experts in property investment, Lachlan and his team are ready to help you take advantage of some of the best investing conditions in almost 20 years. By completing the research, sourcing and negotiations, Lachlan goes the extra mile to find you a high-performing investment and set you on your path to financial freedom. Book in your free discovery call today at atlaspropertygroup.com.au.
This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
G'day, how you going? Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show. I hope you're well. Gearing up for Chrissy, New Year's, everything going on. It's funny, you think that's when Australia takes a rest, but I keep an eye on traffic on smartpropertyinvestment.com.au and traffic goes through the roof. I think a lot of people are just sitting around without a lot to do. They're not working, they're just taking it easy. And often when they pick up a beer or a glass of wine, they jump on their smart telephone and start looking around property and informing themselves around it. So we really enjoy this time. It's a great time if you're a property investor or thinking about getting in property to think about what the year looks ahead, how you're going to go about doing it, trying to get some sense for what's happening. There's a lot of information out there right now which would potentially make you go, oh, I don't want to invest in property. Noise around interest rates going up, which I think have been quashed by the Reserve Bank governor. The fact that it is top of the market, we're going to see price declines into the future. Look, the reality of investing in property is that, number one, yes, there will be rate rises. When? Who knows? Number two, prices don't always go up. They do go down. And that's just a natural inherent cycle of property. My view is that when you can afford to invest in property, invest in property. You can't pick the top or the bottom of the market, but you're better off being in the market if you're in the right asset. So don't get too caught up in all of the naysayers. Don't over inform yourself with negative information, which will stop you buying. Keep better informed. Check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. But we like to get property investors on the show so they can share their journey, whether or not they're doing good, bad, indifferent. Most property investors, it's funny, think that their story is not good enough to come and have a chat with us on the Smart Property Investment Show. That is not the case. We like to chat to investors irrespective of where they're buying, how they're buying, and who they're buying with, or whether they're doing it all alone, whether they've got one property or 1,000 properties. Every property investor has a story. And no doubt Chris Strawn, who's our guest today, has got some good tales from the road. Chris, how you going?
Hey, Phil. Great. Self?
Good, mate. Where are you dialing in from today, seeing that we are still over the Zoom?
Well, we've actually just returned. We've been away for 12 months doing a lap around Australia in a van and just come back and got a few months off and have Chrissy and back into work again.
Wow. Okay. That sounds pretty good. So you're sort of part of this hashtag van life crew, are you?
100%. I loved it. And there's a big group of Australians, I think, just kind of checking themselves with COVID and wondering what they want to do and having that break and spending that time with family. So that was part of the trip, really, having a lot of other families on the road to share the journey with.
So did you do it with kids or with our kids? Three
kids, 7-year-old, 9-year-old, 11-year-old.
Oh, it's good going. Which way did you go around? Clockwise or anti-clockwise?
We went clockwise, started in New South Wales and through South Australia for 6 weeks. And then we did 6 months in WA up the coast and then Northern Territory, Queensland home.
And you homeschooled the whole way through, which was easy.
Both school teachers. So, yep, we did some homeschooling, but it was like an excursion every day.
That's pretty. So you both school. So you and your partner are both school teachers and you just school on the road, did like formal lessons in the morning and then just doing stuff the rest of the day?
Not really. We got an exemption from schooling for the majority of the year, and we just made sure we kept their numeracy, literacy up to scratch, which we might have done a little bit, when we're driving or something. But essentially, we just intentionally taught through whatever experience they were doing. For instance, we went to Dirk Artog Island and we, talked about the history and we camped for a week on the island and checked out, the Dutch remains there and, it was just constant learning essentially.
Were the kids ever like, can you stop being teachers? Can we just be on holidays? Or did they just sort of like a perpetual immersive lesson? Did they sort of clock they were getting their education along the way?
I like to see myself as, I rescue kids out of the classroom sometimes. And I'm an outdoor ed teacher. And so they didn't hammer me about being too much of a formal teacher. We were always fishing or in a boat or out camping or doing something for the trip. So they love it. They're bush kids. I love getting out and about.
So where's like home for you guys?
We're in Fitzroy Falls, the Southern Highlands, just south of Sydney. And we've just moved into Mossvale, one of the suburbs in the Southern Highlands. And just to be a bit closer, the kids are getting a bit older, so a bit closer to town.
Are they back at school now?
They're actually heading back into school for the last 2 weeks tomorrow. And they're just like keen to get in and see their friends. And we've been with them in a 22-foot box for 12 months. So, I'm happy to send them in for a couple of weeks and we can get the house sorted.
You all get on better as a result of the trip?
Unbelievable. Like the time we got to spend with our kids that was one of the highlights, really. Just real quality time to be intentional with them and individually take them out and really fulfill their needs was pretty magic.
And obviously there's a podcast around property investment and sort of it's all interconnected, but what was your setup? What did you get around in?
We had a Land Cruiser and a 22-foot van, triple bunk with an ensuite. And, we drew down a bit of equity and borrowed, for them. And I paid 50 grand for the van and just sold it for 64 grand yesterday. So that was kind of worked out. Just good timing, I suppose, with that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Was the caravan you were towing, was it sort of full drive enabled, like the Land Cruiser? You could get it out off the beaten track?
Independent suspension and, off-road tyres. And, it was good because it meant, we did the Gibb River Road and we did all around the Ningaloo coast, just, hours of corrugations, really. So the van was great and it meant that we were still comfortable, but we were in some pretty remote locations.
Yeah.
We did Mitchell Falls. We did Cape York. Yeah, we did the whole lot.
Wow. Any sort of curly tails from the road, like literally? Did sort of mechanically all okay? You didn't find yourself any spots of bother at all?
No, it went pretty good. I mean, the crocs were interesting. The whole top end is like just a different country, really. So tons of sharks, tons of crocs. So we had a friend's child attacked by a tiger shark and bitten on the foot, and he was out of action for a while and then flew home and then flew back to meet us. And we had the tide come in one night and there's reports of a croc, which we didn't know. And we were in a tent camping up in Cape York. So we had to sleep in the car for a bit because the water came right to our tent. So, yeah, a few little things, but that's all part of the adventure.
Yeah. And so did you just meet other families on the way and they become mates and you travel together for a little while? Is that how it works?
You just meet friends for life. It's like a pilgrimage I see caravanning around Australia. So we really wanted to do the south of France through to Spain, like that kind of that pilgrimage deal. But we ended up, because of COVID, we couldn't really get overseas. So kind of spur of the moment, bought the van and said, let's get out of here and go. So yeah, the people that you meet on the road, a lot of them are like-minded and they, want to make sure that they're connecting with their partner and with their kids. So that was part of the blessing of being on the road, was just meeting people and connecting and being validated for making that life choice, I think.
Yeah. That sounds like a great journey, Chris. And it's funny how there's this concept of the grey nomad where you work all your life in a 9-to-5 job and you retire at a particular age, you buy yourself a good four-wheel drive, a Patrol or a Land Cruiser and hitch on a caravan and you drive around and that's your retirement. But it's a very different proposition now. There's more younger families, younger people on the road rather than grey nomads. You don't need to wait to retirement to do this stuff.
No, and I feel like I probably had that idea of retirement a few years ago, but I think I really was ready to go and have a break and, really have a think of what I wanted to do for the second half of my life. In a sense, I cracked 40 and on the road. And so I think retirement has changed. I wanted a passive income to really just put my feet up. And it was probably a bit selfish in hindsight, but now I think I've got more of an altruistic look and I want to keep on working all the way through. So I think, on the road definitely changed me a lot. And I think I ended up getting sick of holidaying and it was just a gluttony of beaches and food and drinks and laying around. And so, now I want to get back into work, to be honest. I've got some new goals and so that's pretty cool.
That's cool. And in many ways, call it a circuit breaker. You can call it a gap year. Most people do that in between school or university or between university and work. But there's this concept of like a family gap year, which sounds like you've had it. You crack 40, you're sort of halfway through this, and it's good. It's been a good balance. And your partner did sort of same philosophy, same level of sort of engagement and happiness of doing that, and now ready to get back to work. And who knows what happens in 10 years' time?
Yeah, she's 4 years younger, and her career with teaching is kicking off. She had 7 years off when our kids were young. So, that was amazing, and I wouldn't have changed that. It affected our income and things like that. But now I think Rebecca's really keen to get into the teach. She's going to be a great leader in a school. So she was willing I kind of said, here's another crazy idea. Let's go have another adventure. And she was like, yep, let's go. Let's do it.
So the question I'm going to ask you, we'll go to wrap before we get into it is, well, I'm hoping the answer was property helped you do this, but as an enabler to actually go and take nearly a year off and travel with the kids. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. See you soon.
Do you want to achieve wealth and passive income through property investing? PK Gupta helps a community of over 10,000 investors achieve passive income by buying top 5% growth and simultaneously positive cash flow property using data, without wasting months doing research, spending weekends at inspections, or dropping $15,000 on buyer's agents each time. So, if you're overwhelmed with information overload but don't want to drop $15,000 on buyer's agents each time, check out PK's website, consultingbypk.com.au, and learn to build passive income through data.
Welcome back, everyone. Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show. And we chat with Chris Strawn, and he has just gone around Australia the right way, not the wrong way, in a car and a van and these 3 kids, which is quite an accomplishment. But now back to business. Now, the question is, how did you afford to do this, Chris? You said you drew down some equity in order to buy the setup to get you out there, but on the road for that long, did you have any income while you were doing it?
Yeah, so we've got a few investment properties. We started off in 2006 buying our first house, and, it was just a simple little house. And then over time, we grabbed a few more and, built some granny flats, and also a little bit of crypto as well, which helped, top up the bank account every now and then. But we've got 5 rental incomes, and that's what paid our way around.
So you actually were receiving positive income from your property investments while you're traveling around Australia, and that's what kept food on the table and bait on the hooks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So essentially you were positively cash flowed by a couple of grand a week, and, you take out expenses, maybe around $1,000 to $1,500 a week comes in most weeks. So yeah, essentially, we thought we could travel on that, and it was a little bit more expensive, but generally it meant we could indefinitely travel, I suppose, if we wanted.
And for many people, that's their sort of version of what retirement is, as in you don't need to work. And obviously you didn't need to work during that period of time, but you want to work, and we'll sort of chat about that later on. So tell about these assets. If it's putting that much money in your back pocket, you've bought well, or you've not really carrying a lot of debt. So you've got 3 properties, but 2 of them have granny flats. So therefore you've got 5 income producing properties. Is that right? Is one of them your principal place of residence?
Yeah. So we bought Fitzroy Falls for $215,000 about 10 years ago. I put a granny flat on it for $200,000, and I spent a lot on it and made sure it was like an Airbnb quality, because we're very close to Fitzroy Falls. The granny flat rents for $420 and the house rents for $520. And we owe about $400,000 on it. And then we bought another house in Mossvale for $540, and that was about 6 years ago. And the house rents for $550, and the granny flat rents for $420, and we owe about $550,000 on that. And then we bought another house in Mossvale. I love Mossvale. I think
you must do. You're the mayor of Mossvale.
Yeah. Well, I looked for suburbs all over Australia that were close to expensive suburbs and would gentrify. And I looked everywhere, and it just turned out that I thought the best suburb was close to where we live, and it's surrounded by Exeter and Mossvale and all the in Bowral, that are expensive suburbs. And so kind of tried to jump in here, and it's paying off. They're doing really well, essentially. Yep. And the last property was I paid $360 for it, and it's renting for $550 a week.
Okay. And so what's your total debt repayments a month on all those assets? You got 5 income producing assets, but I imagine 3 mortgages. Therein lies the benefits of granny flats. What's your sort of mortgage repayments?
Well, I don't know exactly, but I know I owe around 1.35 mil, and my interest rate is about 2.5%. 4% on average. Yeah, but essentially, by the time you take off that interest, it gives me that about that $2,000 a week kind of
That's
income.
good. That's good going, and you're quite fortunate that you know put yourself in a position where you can go and do what you've done, and that's travel around Australia. Was there any method to your madness? Did you say, "Hey, if I do this in this sequence and get these assets and set it up this way with granny flats, I'm going to be able to go and leave work for a year," or was that just a product of doing it, and it just gave you choice and option?
I didn't have a great plan, but I just enjoyed the pursuit of property, and I love looking at something and thinking that it's going to potentially, go up in value. So grabbing our first property, it was just a bargain, and we paid 200,000 for it, but it's worth 1.3 mil now in 10 years. The other one,
whoa, hang on. So you paid how much?
215 for Fitzroy
and
Falls.
And you put a granny flat on it. How much you spent on the granny flat?
Yep. 200. Yep.
200.
And it's just been valued by the bank at 1.2. So yeah, we might be able to sell it for 1.3, 1.4. So that was a good one.
Is that just you got lucky with that one, or you're just a property genius and you got your crystal ball out and went, Fitzroy Falls is the place to be?
10 years ago, I didn't know much. I thought that was definitely, a bit of luck. And then I started to get my head into it. And when we bought Mossvale, I saw that there was a granny flat kind of half done. So I invested some money and got that separate services and renting. And we paid, 540. It's valued at a bit over $1 million, which is doubled in the 6 years, which is good. And then the last one in Mossvale, when we paid 360, the bank valued it at 480 for settlement, which is a good jump. But we've just listed it today for 800. So that's a good jump as well. And we bought that 2 years ago, which was a good investment.
Yeah, wow. That's smart. So what sort of teacher did you say you were, Chris?
Design technology teacher.
Technology. You said like woodwork and metalwork.
Yeah, and plus I'm outdoor ed as well. That's my passion as well. Yeah.
My favourite courses at school were woodwork and metalwork. I should have really become a builder rather than, I don't know what I do today, podcast, talk to people about property. But so you're reasonably handy then. Did you do a lot of the work yourself on the granny flat, fixing it up? Like you can tackle those sort of projects?
Yeah, little bits, but a lot of the times I'd engage contractors and I was just the professional take rubbish to the bin guy. And I like paying people to do the heavy lifting with that sort of thing, because when you can just delegate, and because of design and technology, I know a design process and I can timetable pretty quickly. And, we were in and out of that house in about 5 weeks in Mossvale. I spent 45 grand renovating it. It was rough and it was ready to be renovated, but I saw the potential, spent the money, new kitchen, bathroom, paint, gyprock, tidied the whole thing up, and then got the equity from it. It's essentially over doubled in that 2 years. So.
And you'll go back to work full-time next year as a teacher?
I've been part-time for about 4 years. Okay. And but next year I'm thinking of just going back even less than that, like maybe about a day a week. And I want to study and do my master's potentially. And a part of linking in with doing the LAT is I've seen so many mental health issues arise through COVID. So I'm going to study psychotherapy and counselling and just move into, it's that more altruistic thing that I want to do now that I've got a passive income and I've still got plenty of life in me to work. I want to start impacting people, and teaching's great to do that and to impact students, but the woodworking's been a great time as well. But now I want to probably more focus on mental health.
Okay. Well, again, property being an enabler to give you time to reflect and consider what you want to do. And, and if that's a choice you make, absolutely go for it. That's, it's good to have that sort of recalibration of, what the next half looks like. And the fact that you got some money in your back pocket and you've been able to set yourself up to do that, for many people, that is the choice that it gives them. And going back to work and doing that study is really cool. What do they still make? Your first thing in year 7 woodwork. I made a pencil box. What do you do these days down your neck of the woods? Oh, no.
Yeah.
What was it? Or it was a pencil box. I think we made.
Well, I know that the technologies like digital technologies is really pushed through now, but I love woodwork and we would make a money box, but instead of just all hand skills, I like to incorporate some of the modern technologies. Like we'll use 3D printing and laser cutting, and so kids get their head around CAD. And so, yeah, it's kind of the wood skills combined with new technologies.
Yeah. Oh, I really enjoyed what we did. Made a pencil box. We made a towel, paper towel holder, a spice rack, that old classic, all the usual thing. And then they let us onto the lathe at year 9 and 10. I find that really cathartic. I'm going to go buy myself one of those things. But anyway, we'll go to another break. When I come back, I want to sort of understand what the future looks like for your portfolio. Chris, back in a moment.
Are you wondering where to buy an investment property right now? Why not let Buyers take the guesswork out of it? We can find you the right place on or off market at the right price. An investment professional from our national network of buyers agents can help you save time, money and stress and deliver you a tailored solution. Talk to us today. Call 1800 975 051 or visit buyersbuyers.com.au.
Welcome back, everyone. Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show with Chris Straw. And he's just done the lap, and that's what it's called, is it? The lap? I've done the lap.
Done the big lap.
Done the lap. You got another lap in you? Or do you think you do the European lap? I've done the European lap a few times. I haven't done the lap yet.
Yeah, I'd love to. I want to have another adventure as soon as the international borders open up. We took our kids to China a couple of years ago, and I've done a bit of Vietnam with my 8-year-old daughter before, but, haven't really got overseas that much. So I'd love to get over and do a few months. I don't think I'll do 12 months again. That was a long time to, I want to conquer a few goals first and then have a break at some point next year. Sure.
Yeah, these circuit breakers are pretty good. Did you feel like you're on holidays the whole time, or did it end up just becoming what it was? It's just life.
It just becomes the norm. You get up when you want and you have your routine, have a coffee, go for a walk and check out the local area. But really, you can just do whatever you want. And it's good because it becomes a lot simpler. You go collect a bit of firewood or you fill up your water tanks. And I like that. It's a really simple life and it's a good way to live.
Were the kids on sort of devices the whole time, and you kept them off their iPads?
There was times like if we did a big leg in a car, we'd give them devices. But because of that, I mean, they're not very good for kids. They get massive dopamine hits and then they have to come down over days from that. So generally, we try and keep them off the devices. But yeah, there's a time and a place to have a bit of a break on a device, sure.
Yeah. What do you think the kids would say that what they most learned from doing the lap?
I mean, they were snorkeling with turtles and they were in the bush. They were in Carragini, in gorges. So they just had these. It was all growing, I think, in self-efficacy and confidence. So we had the time and energy to, highlight those little things where they might have needed to grow, and we just got to invest that time into them. So spending time with mum and dad doing, we were seaplaning to horizontal falls and snorkeling with sharks and helicopter over the bungles. And so we were always constantly doing things that they were out of their comfort zone. And so I think that's really important for a kid.
Do you think they're a lot more independent as a result of doing the lap?
Oh, majorly. Yeah, my daughter's come back and she's going for school captain tomorrow. So she'll walk straight in and do a speech in front of the school. And my 7-year-old, he could do whatever he wants. I gave him my credit card one day at a caravan park to go and hire a pedal bike, and he it was shut. So he went across the road and bought all his mates about $40 worth of mixed lollies with my credit card, and which he was in trouble for at the time. But at the same time, he could run his own business at 7. He's got so much confidence. So I think it's been great for him.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do. And sounds like property was the driver of it. So you said you're going to go back to uni, do some study, the property portfolio. I imagine your wife's sort of heading back to work, I think was what you said. Is there any more property? Do you need any more property, or is that pretty much the extent of what you guys need to do?
I think if we sold up now and kept one place, we would be debt free, and we'd probably have about 500,000 or 600,000 in the bank. So I think if we did one day sell up, it would be okay. For now, we'd have a passive income from the granny flat. We could invest the 500, but I think I can't help but keep my eye out for bargains. So, and I've been around Australia now, so I've got some interesting towns that I think have a lot of potential. So I suppose watch this space. At the moment, I need a break from property and I'm consolidating, and we are going to sell one and take a bit of cash off the table. And I've structured my loans now where I actually don't owe anything on that property. So if it does hit the 800,000 mark that we're asking for it, then we'll get that in cash, and it'll give us an opportunity to have a look around, I suppose.
So is that the justification now? You spent a year looking at property markets right across Australia. That's it's a nice tax deduction, no doubt, for the fuel that you spent on doing it.
Checked out a few woodwork shows as well.
Yeah. It's nice and mixed business with pleasure. We do joke about that. That's super interesting, Chris. It's good to see how property can be the utility to give people choice. And I know most people invest in property. Some people they say, I love property, that's why I invest in it, which I sort of go, yeah, okay, but it's got to be a fundamental reason why. I don't know anyone that doesn't invest in property not to create wealth through it. It's the principal driver of investing in property is to create wealth. What you choose to do with that wealth and what your version of wealth or being wealthy is completely unique. But it sounds as though your version has been, it's given you an opportunity to do the lab without really compromising anything. You can start again, you can set straight back in and get going, and you haven't really liquidated anything as a result of it. You've been able to budget well as you've done the lab. Was that a tough experience? Was it like, were you guys watching where you were spending your dough, or you had sort of had a budget and you said you were helicoptering, right? So you're doing some cool stuff. Were you eating pretty cheaply and nimbly on the way?
We started with a budget, and then we kind of hit Margaret River and the budget went out the window with the wineries and the breweries and everything else. So I remember hearing once generational wealth is looking after your own health and your own mental health and everything else. So, I think for me that just to touch on that quickly, building wealth is good, but also using property to then give me choice and give me an opportunity to make sure I look after myself and my family is really that generational wealth is what I'm trying to do. But then to get onto the budget, we probably thought we would spend about $1,500 a week, but in the end it was more like at over 2,000 a week. And that included a little, we had $5,000 land tax and a few bills rolled in, but it was expensive. But I've tried Forex trading and, lost money on that. And I've tried crypto and we've made a bit of $100,000 on that. So I sold a bit of crypto and that topped up the bank account. But generally, it was a bit more expensive than what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. But I subscribe into it also. A lot of people's view of wealth is financial wealth, whereas to your point is around one of the wealthiest things you can have is, good mental health. And it's absolutely critical. And only then can you be high performing and keep sort of snowballing effectiveness around it. So you got to look after yourself. Do you sort of keep fit and stuff and do all that sort of thing? Like what does sort of looking after your mental health mean for you, Chris?
Yeah, great question. I think, I get out and exercise most mornings and that's really important. I journal because I think it's good to write down all those, unconscious thoughts as you wake up in the morning, and then you get to kind of untangle them and send them back in again. So that's good. I think in the past, I haven't been as present as I could, but as I've probably not worried about property as much and not either had that greed kind of FOMO feeling or that fear like property is going to go down, as I've kind of, forgotten about that and I've been able to be way more present. And so when you don't have that lingering thought, it means now I can sit down with my son and do a puzzle or play chess, or I can go out in the yard and throw a ball, and I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not trying to, listen to a podcast while I'm doing it or anything like that. I can actually dedicate that time to my son or my daughters. And I think that's pretty cool. So in the past, I have been guilty of been thinking of other things and thinking of the future. And when you worry about the future, that's anxiety. And so, the trip's been great for that, to reflect on that and to really learn to be present. So I would say exercise, good sleep, not too much alcohol and the normal vices, and just look after that physical and mental health. Pretty important.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a really good idea around being present. And if you're good at compartmentalizing things, it means you can be really present in everything that you do. But it is definitely a learned skill as well. But the fact that you've got the consciousness around it means that you can be better at doing it. It sounds as though previous to that, you probably didn't even think about or use the language around being present or not, because it just didn't come into your mindset or lexicon. So, to reflect on that and using that time doing the lap, that's good. It's going to give you more choice in the future, mate.
I think so. I think some people can be naturally very present and they just don't worry, but some people are overthinkers, and I am. And that's mean, in a way, I've been supercharged. I can consider property and go hard and really, make some money. But the curse of that as well is you can overthink toxic thoughts. And if you're not mindful of those thoughts, they can be consuming. So I've learnt to set times through the day. I might wake up at 4 a.m. and think about a property, and I'll just say to myself, no, I'll think about that between 9 and 11. Or if I'm dealing with a bank who is just doing my head in, which I know that's been similar to you lately, it drives me mad. And so I'll just dedicate 9 to 11 to deal with banks, and I've pigeonholed it, and then I don't worry about it anymore. And I think you have to have those kind of things because it's essentially a business. You're running a business, and you need otherwise an overthinker like myself, you get anxiety through that.
Look, it is a discipline, and there's a skill. You can get better at doing it, but it normally starts with being conscious about it. And it sounds like, Chris, you're sort of embarking on a journey down that pathway, doing sort of additional study and stuff. I wish you all your best in that. Chris, it's a really good story. And it's nice to have a discussion around how property has enabled, supported, reinvigorated change in someone's life and the outcomes around it. So it's not all about who's got the biggest property portfolio, whose property is worth the most, and how little debt you have and how much income you make. Like, that's all a product of doing stuff right. And what it does, it gives you a chance to, do the things that you want to do. And for many people, that's what wealth means. So sounds like you firmly fit into that. Chris, thanks for your time today, mate. Really enjoyed it.
No, thanks, Bill. Thanks for the chat.
Yeah, really good. That's Chris Drawn. He's just done the lap. There's a lot of people out there doing the lap at the moment who I would imagine property's been a great enabler for it. So if you're doing that right now, if you're on the road, wherever you are, get in touch. Do you listen to this podcast at all, Chris, while you're doing the lap, mate?
I do. And as I said, I set times, and there's some property podcasts I wouldn't listen to anymore because I think it's based more on fear and greed and to rope you in. But yeah, I love having a listen. And now I do with my electric lawnmower. I chuck my headphones on and have a listen.
What would you, while I've got you here, what would you like to see more of? What can I do better, do you reckon?
I love the genuine kind of interviews with people, just the average day-to-day investors. I think that's inspiring because I think a lot of would-be investors don't have the confidence. And so just listening to other people doing it. And I also love the banter with your mates. Like, you can just rip into those guys as much as you want because I have a good laugh and you've got some clever mates. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, they're okay, those guys and girls. But what I really enjoy this podcast is having chat with people like you, Chris, like property investors who are out there doing it. And one of the reasons why we started this is that, I could share my journey as a property investor, and there's a lot more coming in that regard. So we're just about to go through a big portfolio refinancing, which I'm dedicating time and energy and effort to. I'm not going to think about it till I've got to worry about it because it's going to be a bit of a headache, but the outcomes will be good. So watch this space. But if you're tuning into this, come and have a chat with us. To my point earlier, it doesn't matter whether you've got no properties, one property, or 100 properties, 1,000 properties. Come and have a yarn. It's great to share these journeys, this learning. It's such a great medium for sharing this sort of stuff. And that's me doing my job well. So hope you enjoyed that today. Remember to go and check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. You can find us social media, Smart Property HQ. One favor for me, please. And I'm sure Chris is going to do it because I'm going to look. He's going to leave a review wherever he's listening to this podcast right now. Most of you guys and girls on Apple. It's just not me. I get to do the best bit of this job, and that's talk to the people behind the mic. But it's a great team here who do all the heavy lifting and make me sound good, and they get a real kick out of those reviews. If you could do that for me, that'd be great. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
Looking to secure finance to maximize your returns on your investment property? Finny can help. With access to over 70 lenders, Finny can find the right finance for your unique situation. So whether you're ready to refinance for a better rate, improve your cash flow, release equity to grow your portfolio, or are looking to find the right finance for your next purchase, we're here to help. Visit finny.com.au today to learn more.